Just a second.
Go.
Alrighty. Hello. Welcome to our new series, the Eros Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Leah, and today I'm joined by Eli Block and Aubrey Fuller. Hello, hello. Welcome. So every Monday and Thursday, we discuss the cultural trends and topics through the lens of Eros. I'm very excited to introduce you to Eli and Aubrey. They are two longtime practitioners of Eros and orgasmic meditation. Between the two of them, they have over a combined 30 years of orgasmic meditation practice and immersion in the erotic philosophy. So every day, not only, as you will be hearing, do they talk the talk with eloquence and wisdom, but they also walk their walk, which you'll be able to feel as you hear them speak. So we're going to be having some really illuminating they're going to be having an illuminating conversation. It will be sparking things in your brain. So as these things are sparking, you can send in your questions as you think of them in the chat or down below in the comments. We may address some live, or we may collect them at the end to inspire our next topics. So to give you a preview of our podcast today, the topics are the phenomenon of the lesbian divorce rate, the Virgin Mary, women and the smut and true crime shows they love, and dating in 2025. So I hope those were little teasers that will keep you listening. But we'll go into our first topic, the phenomenon of the lesbian divorce rate. And I will let our first piece of media speak for itself, and then I will let Eli and Aubrey extrapolate on that. So here we go.
Highest rate of divorce are lesbians.
Sorry, ladies, I looked it up and it's absolutely the case. Lesbians have the highest rates of divorce, followed by heterosexual couples, followed by gay men. It's a wonderful statistical manifestation of the joke, what does a lesbian bring on a second date? A U-Haul. What does a gay man bring on a second date? Wait a minute, what's a second date? But here's a couple more things that you should know. In heterosexual couples, women are more likely to initiate divorce. But why might this be? Because women score a little bit higher in something called trait neuroticism, which is sensitivity to negative emotion. Some people hypothesize that this leads to greater levels of relationship dissatisfaction. But researchers debate to what extent women actually feel their negative emotions more deeply, or if they more readily express them and communicate them. There's a stereotype that lesbians do a lot of emotional processing, while gay men could certainly do a little bit more emotional processing. There is such a thing as too much emotional intimacy. Sometimes talking about your feelings and feeling them to the depths that you're able to isn't necessarily adaptive for you or for your relationship. What do you all think about it? Tell me down below.
All righty. So Eli and Aubrey, I will let you take that and run with it.
All right. Well, Aubrey and I were chatting about this earlier, and okay, so there's a couple pieces. We're gonna have to chunk this out just a little bit. So, all right. So at the very outset, you've got this statistic, which is that if you watch the whole comedy piece, what he basically says is the divorce rate is led by lesbians, which have somewhere between twice and three times the divorce rate as heterosexual couples and gay men. Somewhere in there, there's like a spectrum. Lesbians way over here, straight couples, heterosexual couples, and then gay men on the side with like almost no divorce. Okay, so that's one. And then he goes on to say, well, people theorize that this is because of trait neuroticism, right? Which is, I think, what he says is sensitivity to negative emotions, right? So we were talking about this, and what came up, what I was thinking is like, okay, but sensitivity, as a guy who's been, doing orgasmic meditation for 16 years, have been in a environment of extreme, sometimes uh, uh, just, very honest relationships with women, more so than I ever had before I did this practice. What might they be? He says trait neuroticism. What might they actually be having negative emotions about? That's the question I think you have to ask. That's not necessarily it's not a bad theory that this happens because of trait neuroticism, right? The sensitivity to negative emotions. But what might those negative emotions be due to? I think is my little erotic inspector gadget, tracking down, following the breadcrumbs back to what actually might be going on here. And what Aubrey and I were chatting about is, well, maybe it's actually that you have to look at the framing of this argument. Well, women get divorced more often. It's a joke. Obviously, the guy's telling a joke, in front of an audience. It's a comedy special. And at the same time, everyone kind of digs the frame of like, well, it's a bad thing people get divorced. That's something which we should be,
It means you failed.
means you failed. It's a negative thing, and when women are to blame, and it's sort of women are to blame. There's this instability is brought about by women, and to that we kind of say like, no shit, Sherlock. Like like amazing observation, comedy guy. Like, oh, really? Like women introduce friction? Like we didn't know that. Oh my God. Like, and what might that friction, what might the purpose of that friction be? Well, we also know that relationships take forms and those forms change. And if we don't change, if we don't, detect and change with the forms, we're kind of doomed to be, supporting forms that don't necessarily fit the actual true essential nature of a relationship because they can outgrow certain forms. And so another way of looking at this is just that like women, well, Aubrey, how would you say it?
Well, it's funny, as you were talking, I had all of these thoughts that we did not previously discuss.
Roll it.
So
Give it to us, Aubrey.
Well, first of all, I was like, wait, is trait neuroticism just another way to say women are crazy? And then, and is it kind of like, is it that same thing that kind of gets done across the board of sort of writing women off as crazy? And then the other thing I thought of was like, I feel like, and Nicole has talked about this in some talks too. So I'm not just coming out with this out of left field, but this is a pretty controversial thought. So in no way whatsoever, let me just preface this by saying, in no way whatsoever do I think gay people should not be able to get married. I think if gay people want to get married, I'd love that. Love that. Anybody should be able to get married. Love it. But why, this is what I don't understand. Why do marginalized people fight so hard for non-marginalized heteronormative bullshit? This is the thing I kind of wonder sometimes, and so I kind of wonder, and this I think was where you were headed, Eli, which is women can't, it's like we have a low tolerance for forms that don't fit anymore.
Artifice
That doesn't.
Artifice. Something I think as a guy, it's like
real. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, that's over. And then women are like, I can't do this anymore. Or, or you just like, right. Like the what you said about women, this is like another way to call women crazy. It's like, no, it's a way of saying they're more honest. And
Yeah.
and they express that honesty perhaps in ways that appear to be negative emotion, but like let's think of it, if you bring it to the level of the material, it's like, yeah, if you were like chained to a pole in a room where there was water rising, like you'd be pissed off too. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Like a picture with Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If you were feeling like your soul was, if you were sensitive enough, that's where I think what it comes down to. If you were sensitive enough to be able to feel that the clothes you were wearing were two sizes too small for you, or where you were eating something that made you break out in hives, right? Like if you were sensitive enough to know these
Right.
things, like you'd have, guess what? You'd have trait neuroticism as well. So it's like, damn, that person really has high trait neuroticism. But because this exists in the invisible, it's like women, it's like, oh yeah, women have trait neuroticism, and that's why they get divorced. Like, no, women have low artifice tolerance.
Right. Right. And so there's that, it's like I mean, the picture that comes into my mind a lot with this kind of thing with form shifts in relationships, basically, which could look like, friendship becoming more romantic, or a romantic relationship shifting more into friendship, or it could look like a marriage, or it could look like a divorce. It could look like any shift from one kind of like form of relating with someone to another. And I literally always have this little image in my mind of how sea creatures change their shell homes periodically because they get bigger, or they want, they need something, they need a different, maybe a little bit of a different interior shape or something like that. And it's that simple. Like, it's not a failure. It's not, it's like we're dynamic creatures that have so many things happening, and so there's so many variables to a person just on their own, let alone in relating with another person. And so form shifts are inevitable. And yeah, maybe women are more honest about when it's time, and that form, that shell, that little hermit crab shell is like squeezing the life out of you, like, because it doesn't fit anymore. Maybe they have less tolerance to just ignore the sensation. Maybe they have more sensitivity, which I think is what you're also saying.
Yeah, more sensitivity and more sensitivity and less validation. Like that's the other side of it, right? There's sort of two sides to this, to the pressure valve on this one. One is that there's the more artifice, the more neuroticism. And on the other side, it's like, imagine a culture where no one has the ability to see if your clothes are two sizes too tight. That actually supports everyone walking around wearing clothes that are two sizes too small. Three sizes too small, you know? And everyone's like, oh man, like like why are you acting that way? It's like, well, because I can't move my arms. And like to have that, to be told you're crazy for something which is actually totally normal. And that is a sign of health to be to have some negative feelings about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is just one aspect of the many things we could talk. I was actually surprised and fascinated by this divorce rate one. I did not know that, and I was very surprised. And there are a number of other erotic ways to look at it, but this will be the one we do today.
Yeah, this is one way of this is one totally overlooked way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, okay, but if we look at the men one, like if you sort of follow just to, put a little pin on it at the end, like if you follow the physics of orgasmic meditation, where we would say like all orgasm originates in the clitoris, like the action of orgasmic meditation starts in the clitoris. It just does. This is actually a really great argument for that. Like if you want people like, well, prove it. And you're like, well, okay. I mean, we can kind of look at this trend where it's like, you know, uh, men kind of go along at a very even, linear, consistent kind of way, and women are kind of more, non-linear and not and feeling based, right? And there's change that happens regularly that if you don't learn how to kind of roll with it, And again, just to frame that as like some superior, some less problematicness. All of a sudden, we were associating that kind of rhythm with a problem, right? And so, to just get that out in the open and be like, okay, guys, like there's 1,000 ways to interpret this, and like this is a massive elephant in the corner.
Beautiful, lovely. I feel more sane from having heard that conversation. And I'm like, I know this is called the Eros Revolution podcast, but this feels like the Eros Return to Sanity podcast. Um, so wonderful. I'm looking forward to as we dissect that more. There's just a lot there. Okay, so to our second topic, the Virgin Mary. What about the Virgin Mary? Well,
Mm.
she in linear time was the goddess who split from her goddess predecessors, like Isis and Inanna, whose divinity was part and parcel and de facto of with their sexuality. It was one
Can
and the
we
same.
can we put this on screen?
Yes, I
Because
was
it's
gonna.
it's actually a piece from someone else's Instagram, and I think it'd be
Oh,
great.
yes. Let me put it on screen right now.
Yeah.
Okay, go. Okay,
I love
right.
this.
The
It's
Virgin
cool.
Mary. Yeah. So this is from a Her Way magazine article. I'm going to take us to our second slide.
Okay, so I love this one. I wanted to do this one today. Honestly, because it reminded me of something in Mists of Avalon. Any Mists of Avalon enthusiasts out there? Anyone? If you have not read that book, it is amazing. You should read it. Leah, can you put it back up?
Yes.
Okay, so the psychological warfare, and I love the revolutionary wording, where Inanna and Isis had braided sexuality into their divinity. Mary's defining miracle was her absence of it, right? Virgin. It's in the name. It's literally in the name. The most celebrated thing about her body was what it had never done. In that shift, the ancient understanding that erotic power could be holy was severed, replaced with the idea that it was dangerous, shameful, or outright sinful. The evidence is in the stones. I don't know what stones it's talking about. We'd have to read the whole article for that. But Mary is Isis, the mother holding the divine child, but without command over the seas. She is Inanna, the queen of heaven, but stripped of her descent into the underworld. She is Artemis, the protector of women, but without her hunt or her wild sovereignty. She wears their faces, but speaks only what the church allows her to say. So I don't know if this is exactly.
There's a lot in there. Can we
Yeah,
maybe
I don't know if
can
this
we
is
can we leave that
exactly
up
like
for a
a.
minute while we talk about it? Because there's really a lot going on.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is exactly like a headline of today or anything. This has just been an ongoing headline, I feel like, for a long time.
Since
in
like zero
my sense of
BC
things.
or
Yeah,
AD.
since well, for a long time, right? So so I think this is really this is such an important one to understand. And there was this I think Jesus is really cool. I really do. I think Jesus is hella cool. But after, in the very early days of Christianity, for a good 200-300 years, the Church of Nazareth, or whatever it was called at that time, was kind of it was sort of considered a small, very controversial sort of edge of things, cult. And it was, it had its like followers or whatever, and it had a lot of persecution, but it was pretty small. And it wasn't until, however many hundred years in, after, the death of Christ and everything, that it became, it got locked in to become what it is today. And when it started to become what it is today, the progression of it in the world, a masculine religion, with a single deity, and there's a lot of different features to it. ascent into the world really created a pushing out of the more feminine religions that had existed for however many thousands of years before that. And all of those, different goddesses from all of the different cultures that were associated with those feminine religions, as this thing is talking about, got all sort of shoved into the Virgin Mary in a way, like almost energetically. And the Virgin Mary became the only sort of, in a Western Christian, an ever more Western Christian world, it became the only female deity-esque being that was, acceptable to like worship. And so, okay, fine. But then you look at what that deity-esque feminine being is about, and it's in the name, right? It is literally her fundamental defining element is a removal of Eros. And so it's like all of this stuff is so hidden in plain sight. You know what I mean? It's like it was a masculine religion took the certain traits of woman, made those sanctified, especially being a mother, and then took out the Eros. And then I'll let Eli talk in a second. The one thing that you always have to understand about Eros is that it cannot be taken out. It is like part and parcel to the fabric of the universe. I mean, it fundamentally it is. And so you can't take it out of things. It will just go underground always. And then you get a world where the Eros is underground. So now I want Eli to say things.
Can we have it back up? Just because I feel like the way this is laced is actually really elegant. This person's got a very elegant style, and I really like it. Right, the defining miracle was her absence of it. That to me is really where it kind of clinches, where it's almost like, right, the most celebrated thing about her body was what it had never done. And in an interesting way, it's kind of like if you imagine like men and women like kind of working in concert to bury the goddess in a certain way or like forget about the goddess, like and how did that happen? It's kind of it's the same arrangement you see, like obviously like in women today, right? So we kind of know there's the Madonna whore complex, like either you're a virgin or you're a whore, right? And so, and this is literally where that comes from. At the same time, there's this sort of like having halving of women, where it's like you get the part you want. Like you get the child, you get the lineage, the bloodline, but all the stuff that kind of like vexes men, it's almost like a sort of half-hearted attempt to like free everyone from like the difficulty or like uh the
The
practice.
dynamism, the chaos.
Yeah, all of those, right, exactly. Because it's like, what are you avoiding here? You're avoiding the notion of sex, which would be what? That men want it, women have a monopoly on it, and men don't like that. So we're just gonna like get around that, and then like, it's you know, women also don't like it because it involves like, it involves surrender, it involves pleasure, it involves all these things that like bring both people down into their bodies and, kind of um, equalize the playing field a bit. And everyone kind of has to admit that they're human and feel their appetite and feel their lust and their longing and animalness, and that's not always comfortable. That is a part of us that, at least I don't know if how it was back then, but at least in the modern day is um, I have a job because people don't know how to cultivate or nurture or stay connected to that part of themselves. And so, you know, um, when I read this, her defining miracle. Oh my God, a miracle. It's a miracle. We can do away with all of those things, right? Even though we know that's not exactly how it works. That's what was considered the most holy. Everyone else can do it the normal way, but we're holding this other model above everything else. So I thought that was really well articulated. Um, yeah. So she
Yeah.
really goes on. Go ahead. She really goes on to say that.
No, I love that. That was great. Yeah, I mean, I could spend, hours talking about just this
Happily.
subject. I love that it's called the psychological warfare too, because it's so true. But yeah, we don't. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys, if you have questions or like about any of the things we're talking about or whatever, put them in the chat, or if you're streaming, put them in the streaming chat. And Leah may choose to interrupt us and tell us these questions. And then we'll remind you again, but at the end of the call also, we would love you guys to write into the Eros platform Instagram and tell us topics that you would like to hear the Eros take on as well. But Leah will remind you about that at the end.
Yes, I will. Thank you, Aubrey. All right, that was lovely. I know that wasn't like a recent current event, but it's like the most current event, like the hot topic of the last 2,000.
Current event.
It's always current. Yes. And then so this goes to our next topic, which is women and the smuts and the true crime shows they love. So you may have noticed there's a phenomenon of women's utter fascination and obsession with true crime and some like filthy lit. So
Not have known this, and you're about to find out.
you're about to find out. All right, let me start us off with a piece of
Start us off, Leah.
media here.
There's two.
There's two. Okay, got it.
We can't hear it.
Oh gosh. Okay, one
Start it
moment.
over.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure you can hear it this time. Let's
You
see.
have to unshare and then make sure and hit share sound when you share and then reshare.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, share sound. Here we go. Yes.
When I you, your soul will need therapy. I'm literally going to destroy your and rebuild it with my mouth. As I'm you, you'll be your ancestors looking.
Okay, great. So that's your revelation on the first video. And then I'm going to take us to our second video.
They're awesome. That particular couple is so funny.
Okay, 1 second. Pardon me. Here we go.
Their body was found bound, gagged, and beaten. They had 57
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
There you go.
Okay, so I love
Give it
these.
to us, Aubrey.
I love social media posts so much that speak to the secret world of women or something, and I feel like some people realize that this is something that women are really into, and for some it's like quite a revelation. But in like, okay, as much as men like porn, like typically men kind of gravitate more toward visual porn, videos and stuff. Women like smutty books, smutty audiobooks, reading books, audio things. There's whole apps devoted to, that have like famous people reading on them, that are just entirely to give women an audio porn experience, basically. Like, I don't know if you guys realize this, but women are actually like super into this stuff, and they like some of the best-selling, books and stories and things that are in this department are incredibly dark. Like, they're incredibly dark, incredibly dirty. It's kind of wild. And then they also, like, there's so many different statistics and videos about the true crime thing too. Like, it often is like, that one was funny because it's like a dude, imitating his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, because he was so like, wow, she really like he was like, I'm gonna make a video about this because she likes these so much and it's so bizarre. But it's like, that's how she relaxes. So I said, with the Virgin Mary thing, like, Eros can't be cut off. It cannot be gotten rid of. It is well, you can look at it a lot of ways, but it's not an inconvenient, like, fucking vestigial tail or something that you can just get rid of. Like, that's not what it is. It fundamentally is interwoven into the fabric of everything that we are. And so the best you could do, if that's your aim, by best, I mean terrible, worst, is to, suppress it and shove it down underground, deep, deep underground. And when you do that, then it will come out in ways that you can't necessarily predict. And you will have to have certain things in your life set up potentially to get access to it in like little doses, enough to like keep you sane, because you do kind of go insane without it. Like, it is the source of meaning in our lives. It's the source of color in our lives, and art, and anything that makes life worth living. Sensation, connection, relating with things, feeling. And so, like, if you cut off Eros, you cut off all those things. Life has no meaning. It's just like grayscale, beige, meaningless, nothing. And eventually you go insane, because who wouldn't go insane in that kind of life? And so it has to come out to save your life. It has to come out the side of your neck, or in some way in your life, or explode something or whatever. It has to come out somewhere. Or you can also, and this is what I see the true crime thing and like the smutty books and all that, like, this is the way that, these are the ways that people have found to set up little feeding stations in their lives, where they can get like tiny little doses, just to not go insane. And I have a live studio audience here today. She's giggling. And so and then I'm so excited to hear your take on all this too, Eli. But the last thing I want to say about it for now,
this is great.
So the last thing I want to say about it for now is like these feeding stations, right? This is like if you live in this is like the doghouse in the celestial mansion that Nicole talks about in a number of talks. This is where you could just open up your consciousness into the erotic reality that exists, and all of the feast of erotic beingness that would be available to you, were you to simply not demonize it and open to it. And instead, what we do is we set up these little feeding stations, and it's like we live in the basement of our celestial mansion in a little doghouse, and we eat like rats. We eat like scraps of food, and like we kill like rats in the basement and eat them. That's what it's like. That's what, and it's like, it's not, it's like this, it's like the idea of food, just enough so we don't go crazy and we don't starve, but we could be having this like endless, beautiful, varied, dynamic, incredible, meaningful feast of Eros every day, all day. And we settle for rats.
Rats and scraps.
Rats and scraps. They can name a restaurant in Texas that. We're in Texas, in case you guys didn't know. Me and Eli are in Texas right now.
I heard we've seen this trend. This has been something which I think we've seen in a lot of forms over a long period of time. And it doesn't just come out in fiction. It comes out in nonfiction. It comes out in the articles which they say are the most popular on news sites are the ones that typically portray or report on intense sexual violence, kidnapping, all manner of things like that. And what is that about? Oh, and like manipulation and people forced in various ways to do things or whatever. And they believe that, well, we believe, I believe that this is also something you can kind of look at through a lens of what you might call like shadow porn, which I think is a lot of overlap with what Aubrey was just talking about, which is this notion that's like there's some part of us, just like we talked about last week with the astronaut CEO and the HR people who like got caught doing their little affair in public, not broad daylight, but might as well have been, right, in the middle of a rock show. And people were fascinated by it. But part of that is because they got to look at a very rare glimpse of someone very, very high up who in the space of 2 seconds fell very, very far. And there's always a beautiful gift on the other side of a fall like that for the person's soul evolution. That is the dark night of the soul, which is, I would likely say that's where those two people have been after being pummeled by the world's social media, shame engine, basically. And there's a lot of lessons those people are going to learn. They're going to learn about not taking things personally. They're going to learn about their basic goodness at a very new level if they recover. If that's a big if they recover. And then they'll be able to come back and help other people, right? Who have gone through the same thing if they want to, right? So that's sort of like the cycle of being canceled and all of that. But at a basic level, we as a culture, like Aubrey was saying, we don't have a lot of access to those sort of more underground parts of ourselves. And so we kind of we sneak it, but it turns out it ends up being like almost like shadow porn, where we read about these things it's for a thrill, right? To kind of light our fire a little bit and like to feel the arousal of like, you know, and people wonder why there's so much like BDSM that has to do with shame. Well, because people's relation, not that shame is good, bad, right or wrong, but if you're reading those things and you're really turned on by some of that stuff, like really turned on by it, it's entirely possible that you also think it's entirely inappropriate to be turned on by it. This is how these things go. And so if that is the case, you might be a shadow porn fan getting kicks on that. And so, when I hear things like this, that's sort of the label that I end up thinking about it is there's some aspect of gratification. And not only that, it's being made for those people. It's being packaged at the packaging plant of the news or of the book, whatever, specifically to tap into those places.
It's so formulaic.
Totally.
And you 100% when you're in like I've gone down the smut book channel deep. And you're in there and that like your all of your whatever is being manipulated and you don't care. You don't care.
Oh,
I think it's
right.
the same
Getting
same
high.
experience with porn. Yeah, exactly. So someone asked, how do we learn to not be in craving, but be in healthy, sacred sexual energy in your life? And so the thing I want to say about this is that it's not about, like taking things, it's not about renouncing. This is not a path of renunciation. This is a path of experience, which I love so much about it. because that's a feminine approach, a lot of like masculine spiritualities fundamentally revolve around renouncing and renunciation. And this one doesn't. And it's actually about getting inside of experiences and getting messy and trying things and failing at things and learning the mechanics from the inside out of places that you're totally like, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it out of this one, but I'm going to try to learn the ins and outs of this place, so that I'm free in this location. And so it's not about renouncing anything. And I'm so glad for that. It's not about stopping reading smutty books or stopping true crime podcasts. Like, if you're into whatever you're into, like, keep going. And then you add Eros, like you add something like orgasmic meditation into your life. You add, types of interactions and connections and erotic, working with erotic philosophies and things like that don't come with that kind of formulaic taking advantage of your arousal, but are showing you the mechanics of how to work with your arousal in a more sustained way, and this is something that we talk about in actually both our own class and our erotic artist class, which is, the difference between gratification and satisfaction, the difference between pleasure and enjoyment, eudaimonia and hedonia, hedonism, right? So it's like there's a way to approach life and enjoyment and eros where you're choosing the things that are going to lead to a regenerative experience, and then you're choosing the things that are just sucking energy and giving you a very temporary sense of relief. And I know, like, when I started this, I had a sense of that a little bit, but it took me a bit to build the discernment between the two, and to then genuinely desire the gratification and the enjoyment more than the satisfaction and the pleasure. And I still don't always experience that. Sometimes I just want a pleasure, and it's like, and then you get to experience that, and experiencing the diminishing returns of that, and have that experience and learn from that experience and grow at the rate that you grow. And that's what an experiential path looks like for me, and each person kind of has what it looks like for them. And so that's what I would say. That's what I would say in answer to that question.
Love that.
I love that too, Aubrey. That was beautiful. I feel a sense of levity around my own enjoyment of things that might be inappropriate.
I think Leah goes on the deepest ride on these calls.
100%.
Here we go.
I love it.
Okay, our next topic, thank you guys, that was brilliant. Our next topic is dating in 2025. And I will say no more, but I will just go ahead and share this.
So I had a really good time today, and I just wanted to check in. You don't have like a girlfriend or anything?
No, I don't have like a secret girlfriend.
Good, me too. I do have like a platonic mistress though.
That's totally fine. I have a fuck sister-in-law. It's a girl I used to be Sing's best friend.
Ooh, I also have a cat sitter. He comes around like once a week.
I have a foster fiance. It's like a girl who's in between relationships and just needs a place to stay.
The only other thing that you should know about is I have a hand-me-down husband. It's my best friend's ex-fiance who I now hook up with.
Well, that's fine because I have an estranged queen, but it's just a power dynamic.
I'm really glad we had that chat. I think this is really gonna work out between us.
I'll just leave that right there. There's a lot of
So
best
funny.
friends in there. A lot of best friends so-and-so in there.
That video makes me laugh so hard. Oh gosh, there's so many angles to go with it. I think that I bet you'll have a totally different angle to this one, Eli, which I love. And I'm looking forward to it. But for me, I'm kind of like, I don't know, I'm sort of like, that's awesome. Like, in a way, there's so much Eros already in that video, like the honesty of the exchange is very erotic, like the honesty of just being forthcoming about like your unusual life and connections and the way that you do relating is erotic in its way. And then having all of these different like forms of relating with all these different people in your life is actually like pretty erotic and pretty cool to me. And then some of the different insinuations, the hand-me-down husband, I think one was the funniest to me. It was like my best friend's ex-fiance who I now hook up with or something like that. But to call it a hand-me-down husband, it's almost like her woman friend was like complete with this person, and now she is sort of like taking care of them for a little while in the interim or something. I don't know. There were just so many little things in it that, and he's like, oh, and but it's just a power dynamic, and I don't know. There were just like a lot of different little tidbits in it that already were very erotic in a way, I think. And then I think, a lot of times people just exalt the idea that eventually you're supposed to get rid of all of that nonsense and be in your ultimate monogamous relationship with the one. And that would be the end all be all. And everything else that you're doing up to that point is, somehow like less than that or something like that. And so those are actually my thoughts on it.
Well, I heard it again in sort of a new way this time, and was like, why are they like, okay, so the joke obviously is like people are so relationally fluent now these days that they have all these classifications of all like those are hilarious. Like they're legitimately hilarious classifications. A hand-me-down husband, like who says that? But like, there's sort of a forthrightness and an honesty about it that's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm having sex with my ex-best friend's ex-husband, and like that there's something very normalized about all of these totally, these relationships that maybe 10 years ago somebody would find out about later and be like, you what? But like now it's like just kind of like showing your, Pokemon collection or something to somebody and like saying, here are all the cards that I have, and so, oh, those cards could be compatible. Yeah, that's cool. And like the other thought I had while I was watching it this time was um almost like, and like what's the purpose of all of this? Like so that the other person doesn't feel duplicated, like what's the role, what's the thing that they're trying to avoid by saying, if we were to like look at this through some kind of serious lens, which is silly because it's such a silly, ridiculous, hilarious thing to be doing. And like, like, but at the same time, like what does that speak to where people do need to class, where that is actually an emergence, where there is sort of an emergence of that in the culture of like classifying all these kind of relationships and like people, you know, like we talked about in the first video, like the divorce rate, like people ending a form, and then all of these things are kind of like, what's the form after the form? Right? Like what, like, because usually you stop at where something ends, like husband, wife, done. Now you are nothing. Now you are just X that, but you don't get to be a new something. You just get to be an X something, right? For some reason, I just keep going back to the husband one. What but it's a good example. Um, but it's sort of like, I don't know. I feel like those labels in a certain way, maybe they just seem weird because um they're uh they're flaunting what we would call like climax consciousness, where the end is just the end and there's nothing beyond it. Um, and that they're sort of talking in a way that's uh many of those classifications are things that sound silly and maybe to some degree because they don't have a place in the sort of normal pantheon of how a relationship should go. So I don't know. I'm kind of multiple minds, Aubrey.
A lot of the other dating in 2025 videos, like they go a lot of different places. Cause I kind of looked up, on TikTok, like what has this particular tag right now. This one I felt like was on the more positive end of, this is just what it's like dating in 2025. Here you go, And then there's ones that are just complaining about the opposite sex completely, like, or the same sex, whatever it may be. And just, they're very like, I would like a committed relationship. Oh, great. I also would like that, except in 2 weeks when I no longer want that and I ghost you, kind of complaining, kind of annoying like that. And I just thought it was like, to me, this video and all of those videos, what they're showing is that there's actually maybe more outside the box relating and fluidity around it, and acceptance of that than there was, and that it's actually kind of some sort of a like a liberation feeling coming up from underneath, but there's complaint about it that it hits on top because it's not in line with the typical traditional thing. And in not so much in that series of videos, but like in general, also there's a big resurgence of very traditional dating and marriage in the US right now too. And there's kind of space for that as well, and it's almost like I saw, oh my God, this could be its whole own one, Eli, but we can maybe do this one next time. It was so funny, but it was like, there's this whole thing about trad wives. Do you guys know about trad wives? Traditional wives, and they're kind of like a modern version of, the housewife who like stays at home and dresses a certain way and kind of serves her husband from a place where she decided to be this, not just because she has to be, because she wants to be, and has his children and like cooks these really elaborate, amazing home cooked meals and all these things. And it's posed in social media and stuff as kind of an empowering choice. Like, this is also a choice that you can make. I kind of like it. I follow Nara Smith. She's like kind of the ultimate trad wife. And I'm a fan of anything women are choosing. Like, if they're like, I'm going to choose this, I'm going to cosplay this for a while, I'm into that. But then some other people started talking about how these really specific parts of being a trad wife, like the trad wives started to get these necklaces that were a lot like the BDSM ownership collars that people get or whatever. And then they were like, oh, being a trad wife is a kink. You have a kink. You're just playing out a kink and a fetish. And it was like, but it was like funny because it was sort of like reconciling it, and it just took its place among the many different ways that you can choose to relate. And I don't know, I'm kind of like anything that feels like it's dynamic enough, where people are trying different forms and are dynamic enough to like shift their ideas around them, I feel like it's kind of erotic. It's not, you're never going to find a particular one that's the end all be all form. Like, that's the point. You want a little bit of, fluidity, and you want a liberated state of mind where you can move through the different ones that call you in, so that you can, have the different karmic experiences or learning experiences or what have you inside of each one.
Nice.
Lovely, beautiful. That was great. That was our last topic. And that was a like smorgasbord of great things to ingest and think about for the next couple of days until our next podcast, which is on Thursday. So I'll wrap us up here, but I will say a few things. We talked about lesbians' divorce rates. We talked about dating. We talked about the Virgin Mary. What are the things that draw these things together? What do they have in common? There is an erotic take on all of them. There are erotic truths underlying all of them. I want to make sure that everyone who enjoyed this hour of erotic philosophy today has a way to get more of it, because there is much more. So, the world is full of normal takes, right? Every now and then you get something that works for you, but for the most part, you're dealing in the world of appearances. This is why we created the Eros platform. For $11 a month, you can get a basic membership and start turning your life on right now. So I will go ahead. So to sign up for a membership, you go to erosplatform.com/memberships. And again, I'll say about the Eros platform, we created it because for the most part, we are dealing in the world of appearances and surface level relating, but we all have a sense that there are some deeper things going on. And that is why we created the Eros platform. So again, to sign up for your membership, erosplatform.com/memberships. Thank you so much for joining the Eros Revolution podcast today. We hope you join us next time every Monday and Thursday. If you have any hot topics that are burning a hole in your ear, however they say it, that you're wanting the erotic perspective on, please leave a comment below on whatever platform you're streaming on, or you can DM, you can direct message our Instagram at Eros_platform. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about tradwives more in depth next time. We don't know. We really opened every call is a Pandora's box, and we like Pandora's boxes here. So again, thank you all for joining, and we will see you on Thursday.